Jerry, I'll cook up some fish head, yeah. Yeah, in a coconut milk. Yeah. I'm gonna boil some Irish potato with some vegetable mix, chiffon butter, yeah, with some mayonnaise in it, yeah, in the Irish potato, yeah, straight. Me know why you can't tell me about my house, look. Focus on the pot. Boom.
Welcome back to MyView TV, the people's platform, the home of undiluted news, reviews, updates, and your daily dose of entertainment. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, like, share, and subscribe.
I don't bring nobody forward in here to cheer for me. Everything what you see up my natural talent. Man, me tell you something. You see, when you know what to please the audience with, it's simple me.
A significant part of the prosecution's case against Beachy Stout rests on the sworn testimony of a convicted murderer, Denvalyn Minott. Minott has claimed he was contracted to murder Beachy Stout's wife, but subcontracted the hit to Oscar Barnes. Bubla's credibility had been hammered by the defense, who described him as a serial liar who was the real killer. On Monday, the lead prosecutor suggested to the jury that despite his criminal history, Bubla was a truthful witness. Drawing on what she says described as her country roots, the prosecutor presented the jury with a Jamaican proverb for their consideration. She quoted the well-known saying, "If fish come from river bottom and tell us the alligator have gone boil, believe him." According to the prosecutor, Bubla is the fish in the river bottom that was a plot to murder Tonya Hamilton MacDonald. The prosecutor reminded the jurors of the recordings they heard, in which she says Beachy Stout appeared obsessed with having an alibi on the night his wife was to be killed. She told jurors the defense had in no way contradicted the recordings. She also maintained there was no evidence the recordings had been tampered with or in any way altered. According to the prosecutor, the jury should accept the recordings as authentic conversations which happened in real time. She asked the jury to also carefully consider Minott's evidence and how it pointed to an intricate plot to murder Mrs. Hamilton MacDonald. The prosecutor also reminded the jury that Beachy Stout had gone as far as introducing Bubla to his dogs so that they would be familiar with his scent and give him ease of access to murder Mrs. MacDonald in her home. That plan was ultimately abandoned. According to the prosecutor, the jury should remember that the pathologist's report matched the description from Bubla as to where he saw Barnes stabbing Tonya as she fought for her life and screamed for her mother. The jurors were attentive as the prosecutor reminded them that Bubla is the person who was there the night Tonya was murdered. She told the jury he was the one that confessed. She told jurors Bubla was the one serving a sentence for his part in the crime. She says, taken together, all those things make Bubla a credible witness who they should believe. The prosecutor again stressed, quote, "Mr. Minott is the fish from the river bottom of Tonya's murder."
The 7-member jury of 4 men and 3 women listened intently as the prosecutor questioned Beachy Stout's sincerity and believability after learning that his second wife, Tonya Hamilton MacDonald, had been murdered. The prosecutor asked the jury whether a man who had only hours ago learned that his wife had been killed would have proceeded with business as usual and accused her of stealing $30 million from him. The prosecutor's first witness had told the court that the Portland businessman went about his day as usual the day after his wife's murder. According to the prosecutor, Beachy Stout's behavior was not consistent with that of a man who had just learned his wife had been brutally killed. She also questioned his tears at the scene of the crime. According to the prosecutor, the jury should consider how, having arrived at a scene where a burnt-out car was seen and a charred body was laying on the ground, Beachy Stout was able to so quickly conclude that it was in fact his wife's body. She asked the jury whether he had been so immediately certain of Tonya's death because of the call he had received from the Crown's star witness, Denvalyn Minott, confirming that, quote, "it is finished," end quote. The prosecutor asked the jury to consider whether the businessman's tears on the night of July 20 were sincere or only part of the elaborate plot to murder Tonya Hamilton MacDonald. The jurors' eyes remained fixed on the prosecutor as she weaved in and out of Jamaican patois, asking them not to believe Beachy Stout was truly a grieving husband on the night he identified his wife's corpse. She suggested to them he was instead part of the conspiracy to commit murder. The prosecutor again asked the jury to question Beachy Stout's sincerity as she reminded them that Tonia's mother had testified that she had not heard from her son-in-law after her daughter's murder. Mrs. Hamilton had testified she was seeing Beachy Stout for the very first time since her daughter's 2020 murder when she gave evidence in the Home Circuit Court last December. Staring intently at each juror in turn, the prosecutor reinforced that aspect of Mrs. Hamilton's testimony, saying, quote, "Not a call, not a text, not a telegram, not a message in a bottle, nothing," end quote. Beachy Stout and another man, Oscar Barnes, are charged with the July 2020 murder of Tonia Hamilton MacDonald. Her charred remains were found in Sherwood Forest, Portland. Her throat was slashed and she was stabbed multiple times. Her car had also been set ablaze.
According to the female prosecutor, quote, "The all never did good because there were too many loose ends," end quote. She told the court that there were 3 people directly involved in the murder: Beachy Stout, the contracted killer Denvalyn Minott, and Oscar Barnes. She said Beachy Stout was the mastermind and Bubler was a facilitator who subcontracted the killing to Barnes. She said Barnes was the actual killer. The prosecutor noted that the state's witnesses were painted as liars, murderers, and thieves by the defense. She said those are exactly the type of people Beachy Stout would have to approach in order to do what he wanted to do to his wife. She added that he couldn't have approached an upstanding citizen to do his dirty work. She posed a rhetorical question to the jury. Can a murderer, a thief, or a liar be truthful? She answered, quote, "Yes, these people are capable of telling the truth," end quote. The prosecutor acknowledged that there were a number of inconsistencies and discrepancies between Bubler's evidence and evidence given by another witness. Bubler and the witness admitted to lying in their initial statements to the police. She said to the jury, quote, "Does the fact that they lied in previous statements mean they can't be believed for anything at all? People lie for different reasons," end quote. According to the prosecutor, Bubler gave an explanation as to why he lied because he wasn't sure who he could trust. The other witness, she said, told the court he lied because he feared Beachy Stout. The prosecutor implored the jury to look into the substance of their lies rather than the fact that they lied in the first place. She contended that the state's 14 witnesses were credible and reliable. In criticizing the arguments of defense counsel, the prosecutor said it's simply a case of, quote, "It wasn't me, the shaggy defense." She said the defense wants the jury to believe that the prosecution, the police, and all 14 witnesses came together and cooked up the case. Mr. Townsend says the Crown has skillfully applied makeup to its case to conceal the major concerns in the murder trial. He says it's his duty to rub off that makeup to reveal the truth. In his closing arguments, Mr. Townsend appealed to the jury to focus on 2 main witnesses, the already convicted contract killer, Denvalyn Minott, and a former male employee of Beachy Stout. He said Bubler provided the gateway to the phone recordings and call data records, which the prosecution is heavily relying on to prove its case. According to Mr. Townsend, Beachy Stout's former employee provided background information on the couple in an attempt to stage a motive for the killing. But he noted that the former employee has been compromised as he has a particular interest to serve. That interest, he said, was due to a plea bargain deal he had with the state. Mr. Townsend remarked that this agreement with the state saw the witness coming forward to testify for his freedom, essentially a get-out-of-jail ticket. He encouraged the jury to be wary of the evidence before the court. He said, quote, "He's a witness to be suspicious of, a witness that you don't trust like how you trust other witnesses. He took it much further. He not only did a deal to point finger at someone else to get his freedom as a result, but he's also a liar," end quote. Mr. Townsend pointed out that the witness lied to the police in his initial statement. He rubbished the explanation the witness gave about being fearful of Beachy Stout. Facing the jury, Mr. Townsend said, quote, "The Crown having brought this witness here that lied to them, they selected what lies they wanted to bring before you. They know of other lies. They are duty-bound to serve us with the lies. They brought someone here who they know is a liar and asked you to believe him," end quote. He posed a rhetorical question to the jury. Is this the kind of justice system you want? Meanwhile, Mr. Townsend criticized the police for searching Beachy Stout's office while he was in custody. A forensic toxicology report that was entered into evidence confirmed that black liquid found in a glass bottle in Beachy Stout's office is sulfuric acid. Mr. Townsend stressed that the police could have taken Beachy Stout or his attorney to oversee the search. He said this would have protected the integrity of the search. Mr. Townsend appealed to the jury not to consider what they knew about the case before being selected. He advised the jury that they were chosen to sit in a very popular case that's constantly reported locally and abroad. He said, quote, "There's no room for emotion. This is a case without passion. You can't test passion. You can't feel sorry for anyone, including the accused. You have to judge this case dispassionately." End quote. Tonia's partially burnt body was discovered with its throat slashed in Sherwood Forest, Portland. Her car was set ablaze. Beachy Stout's attorney Christopher Townsend said the Crown failed miserably with phone recordings of conversations purportedly between his client and convicted contract killer Denvalyn Minott. Bubla testified that he made the recordings, but Mr. Townsend suggested there's no way he could have navigated a phone as based on his own evidence he can't read. He said sarcastically,
"Can't read, can't spell, now maneuver a phone, but he make recordings."
Mr. Townsend urged the 7-member jury to be suspicious of the recordings because its origin is unknown. Meanwhile, in dissecting a report of call data records, defense attorney Courtney Rowe pointed out that the material is inconsistent with the evidence given by witnesses in court. Bubla told the court how he used 4 phones to make the recordings, but the report only featured one International Mobile Equipment Identity or IMEI number attributed to a phone used by Bubla. An IMEI number is a unique serial number for identifying a device. An expert witness testified how he carried out extraction of data from Bubla's phone. Mr. Rowe questioned.
If the Crown can't get their story straight, how can they ask you to believe it?
He continued,
"We heard of how there was communication between Bubla and Tonia, and all now we don't hear a recording."
The records show that Tonia called Bubla 31 times. Bubla called Tonia 14 times. According to Mr. Rowe, the evidence has left the jury in a state of confusion. He submitted that the prosecution has skipped several hurdles in the matter. Additionally, the defense argued that the number attributed to Beachy Stout has no subscriber information from the service provider. The defense noted that the attribution came from the investigating officer, which added to the concoction of the evidence. Mr. Rowe argued that the prosecution is trying to downplay instances of police being accused of tampering with evidence. In closing, Mr. Townsend told the jury,
"The Crown's case has fallen. We have taken off the makeup. You're now seeing the bare bones. You're now seeing it for what it is."
The legal team for Mr. Barnes completed its submission this afternoon in the Home Circuit Court, instructing the panel of 7 jurors to return a not guilty verdict. Mr. Barnes is represented by attorneys Vincent Wellesley and Ernest Davis. Mr. Davis told the jurors that they could not hold the fact that his client gave an unsworn statement against him. He informed them that his client acted on his constitutional right, but he argued that the case against his client is one of identification and credibility, as the prosecution's main witnesses never met nor communicated with Mr. Barnes. The prosecution's star witness, Denvalyn Minott, who was sentenced to 19 years behind bars for his role in Tonia's death, testified that he subcontracted Mr. Barnes to kill Tonia after Mr. MacDonald promised him $3 million to kill her. Minott told the court that he and Mr. Barnes lured Tonia to Sherwood Forest, where she was killed and her car burned, under the guise that they were going to purchase an illegal firearm to avenge her father's death. Mr. Davis said they made up the story about the gun so that it could appear that Minott knows Mr. Barnes. The attorney said none of the telephone numbers assessed by an expert was attributed to Mr. Barnes, noting that there is no evidence linking Mr. Barnes to the crime besides Minott pointing him out to the police. Mr. Davis said the convict was unable to describe his client in terms of height and complexion. He also submitted to the panel that the investigating officer made up a statement he claimed Mr. Barnes gave him after he was taken into custody.
Thanks for watching. This was a MyView TV production. Remember to share, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, tell a friend for tell a friend, and remember, it never bring nobody forward for cheer for him. Walk good.